half of U.S. adults exposed to harmful lead levels as children. Early childhood lead exposure is known to have many impacts on cognitive development, but it also increases risk for developing hypertension and heart disease, experts say. According to Washington Times on Bended Reality, over 170 million U.S.-born people who were adults in 2015 were exposed to harmful levels of lead as children. A new study estimates researchers used blood lead levels, census, and leaded gasoline consumption data to examine how widespread early childhood lead exposure was in the country between 1940 and 2015. In a paper published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences on Monday, they estimate that half of the U.S. adult population in 2015 had been exposed to lead levels surpassing 5 micrograms per deciliter, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention threshold for harmful lead exposure at the time says. The scientists from Florida State University and Duke University also found that 90% of children born in the U.S. between 1950 and 1981 had lead levels higher than the CDC threshold, and the researchers found significant impact on cognitive development. On average, early childhood exposure to lead resulted in a 2.6 point drop in IQ level. The researchers only examined lead exposure caused by leaded gasoline, the dominant form of exposure from 1940s to the late 1980s, according to data from the U.S. Geological Survey. Leaded gasoline for on-road vehicles was phased out starting in the 1970s, then finally banned in 1996. Study lead author Michael McFarland, an associate professor of sociology at Florida State University, said the findings were infuriating because it was long known that lead exposure was harmful based on anecdotal evidence of lead's health impacts throughout history. Though the U.S. has implemented tougher regulations to protect Americans from lead poisoning in recent decades, the public health impacts of exposure could last for several decades, experts told Associated Press. Childhood lead exposure is not just here and now, it's going to impact your lifelong health, said Apeen Solomon, Senior Program Manager of United Nations Children's Fund. Early childhood lead exposure is known to have many impacts on cognitive development, but it also increases the risk for developing hypertension and heart disease, experts said. They said, I think the connection to IQ is larger than we thought, and is startlingly large, said Ted Schwaba, researcher at University of Texas, Austin, who studied personality psychology and was not part of the new study. Schwaba said the study's use of an average to represent the cognitive impacts of lead exposure could result in an overestimation of impacts on some people and underestimation in other people. Previous research on the relationship between lead exposure and IQ found a similar impact, though over a shorter study period. Bruce Lemfier, a health sciences professor at Simon Fraser University in Vancouver, Canada, who has researched lead exposure and IQ, said his 2005 study found the initial exposure to lead was the most harmful when it comes to the loss of cognitive ability as measured by IQ. The more tragic part is that we keep making the same mistakes again. First it was lead, then it was air pollution, now it's PFAS chemicals and phthalates, chemicals used to make plastics more durable, and it keeps going on. And we can't stop long enough to ask ourselves, should we be regulating chemicals differently? This is by Drew Costi, Washington Times on Bended Reality, and I would venture to say it's not just the United States, because this study was based only on the leaded gasoline used. So leaded gasoline was used worldwide, so I would expect that this also applies to all populations using leaded gasolines up to the time that unleaded was used. Please leave your comments and thank you for your support. Please support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below.